Hello everyone and welcome back to Age Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In this video I'm going to go over what are the changes to the core rules in Age of Sigmar 2nd edition that you need to know about. So what I've done is I've read the 16-page booklet for the core rules. Doesn't sound like a lot of pages, but certainly compared to the 4-page rule book we had before, they certainly have filled in a few sections that really needed attention. So what I've done is I'm not going through the whole core rules, not telling you what they all are, because that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to basically tell you what's changed since the last edition and those changes you need to know about to make sure you don't make any mistakes in your future games of Age of Sigmar. So firstly, first change comes to under units, and is a unit must be set up and finish any sort of move as a single group, with all models within 1 inch horizontally and 6 inches vertically of at least one other model from their unit. So firstly, it's a bit of a change. You've always had to be within 1 inch horizontally, but as far as I'm aware, they didn't have any measurement for what it was vertically. Now, this is quite a really nice thing for me, really, because it happened quite a few times where you would obviously like have, I don't know, a block of skeletons, let's say, 'cause that's a big unit, so a unit of that, unit of 40, and they're sort of moving over a very low sort of terrain feature, but some of the models are standing on, I don't know, like on little walls and stuff, so they end up being about 2 inches vertically away from any other models in that unit, and that's technically not within 1 inch of the rest of their unit, so it's not in coherency. But now, because you can be within 6 inches vertically, that's a really nice thing for me. Like I say, it might have already been there, but I didn't see it, and it's nice to add it in there just in case it does come up in a game. There's no confusion about if your unit is in coherency or not in coherency. Okay, so then on the same note, it goes on to say, if a unit is split up at the end of a turn, models must be removed from the unit until only a single group of models remain in play. Now this is certainly new, was not in the last edition, and that basically, we go back to the unit of 40 skeletons again. It's an extreme example, we'll use that. If they're all stretched out, let's say in 2 ranks, and one model from each of the ranks in the center of the unit go out, and then that unit is no longer within 1 inch coherency with each other, half the unit will have to be counted as being slain, essentially, be taken off the board because it's not in coherency. Now that is an extreme example. It probably will happen just more like with the one model in a unit that gets cut off and basically sounds like he dies in a really horrible way. The only problem I can see with this is I have fought against a fair few Star Drakes before, and I can imagine if you did, you know, for whatever reason, stretch out a unit of 40 skeletons, let's say, in a line, the Star Drake is, let's say it was the last unit to activate in combat. That's unlikely, but let's say it did, and so basically the skeletons are already piled into it. It could eat 3 of the skeleton models and then make that unit no longer in coherency, and by default it's the end of the turn, battle shock, so half that unit is just going to have to be wiped out. Now this is a very, very extreme example, and this is probably me like being worried for no reason, because you know it might not even ever come up, but it's something I thought about, and you know if it did, it would really, really suck. But I can understand why they have done it. It's basically to stop people like daisy chaining models and all that, like units and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it does have a reason, and it does add another tactic to it as well. So when you remove models, you have to think really hard about it. Now it's not just so much of, I don't want to remove the banner or the champion or the hornblower or whatever, or I don't want to remove this guy because I want him to be able to attack that model over there. It's more about just making sure that unit stays as a group, which, yeah, like I say, it makes sense, because there's sometimes where units end up being like 5 or 10 inches apart, like a big block of yeah, let's use 40 skeletons again. If 10 models in that unit die, they can end up being like I say, like 5 or 10 inches apart, and yeah, because of grave sites and stuff, they'll come back, but they end up not being one unit anymore. So yeah, I think it makes sense. Okay, and then we go on to rerolls. So the first one is if a rule allows you to reroll a result that was made by adding several dice together, e.g. 2d6 or 3d6, etc., then unless otherwise stated, you must roll all of those dice again. Now, I think before this was fairly self-explanatory, but there was still some question of if, I don't know, you had an ability that you reroll your charge rolls. Does that mean I can reroll one of the dice, or do I have to reroll both of the dice? This just stops that question. It just means you would have to reroll both of them. I think most people are doing this anyway, but it just straightens that thing out there, and that's why I thought it would be important just to include that in the video, just in case any of you guys weren't aware of that. And then the last, what I believe is a change, is the rerolls happen before modifiers to the roll. Now, like I say, this might have already been there in an FAQ, but it's just in the core rules now, so it's very easy to find. So an example of this would be, let's say you have a unit that can reroll hit rolls of 1, and the enemy has made you -1 to hit, so effectively a 2 is a 1, but as you would use your rerolls before modifiers came into it, you would only reroll those 1s, not the 2s. So that's an example I can think of. I'm sure there's plenty other ones out there. We then move on to roll-offs. So sometimes a rule may require the players to make a roll-off. When this is the case, each of the players roll a dice, and whoever rolls the highest wins the roll-off. If there is a tie for the highest roll, make the roll-off again. Neither player is allowed to re-roll or modify any of the dice when making a roll-off. Okay, so this was sort of clarified in the last edition of the General's Handbook, so the General's Handbook 2017. One of the rules of 1 were, I believe, I think it's a rule of 1 saying you couldn't modify the priority roll for a turn in any way, shape or form, and then this just writes it in stone, saying that, but also says if there's any other roll-offs for any other reason, you can't modify it. So it just makes it a bit more clearer. And then we move on to the general. So if your general is slain, pick another model from your army to become your new general. Now, this was definitely a new thing, because before it was very paramount. Unless you're a Skaven player, once your general was dead, that was him gone. That was your chances to do command abilities gone, and you couldn't, pick another one. And things like their command trait would die with them, and so on. So this is new. It's interesting, and I don't know if it's bad or good yet. I just think it's quite fun. When your general dies, you get another one back who can do lots of nasty things. And yeah, let's go with it, shall we? Then we move on to turn priority. Now this, of course, has changed. I'm sure you guys already know this. And it is, if the roll-off is a tie, then the player who went first in the last battle round can choose who goes first in this one. But if it is the first battle round, the player that finished setting up their army first chooses who has the first turn. So the last bit there is exactly the same as it was. If you set up your army first, you'll be able to choose who goes first. So having an army that fits all into one battalion will still be a big thing. But obviously what has changed is it is harder to get a double turn. Now, I am a big fan of trying to get a double turn, so obviously it's a little bit sad. It makes it harder, but at the same time, it's an absolute pain in the arse when the enemy gets a double turn on you, and if they've got a really hard hitting army or something like that, they can destroy half your army before you can really react to it. So yeah, I think it's good. I knew some people didn't like the priority, for the turn roll off, and how it changes, and it's not as simple as 40k where you go, I go. But with this, I think it's a way to meet in the middle. For the people who didn't like the randomness of turn priority, it makes it a bit less random. And then for people who do like the randomness of it, you still have the randomness there. So I think, yeah, it's a nice place to meet in the middle for both opinions. And then we move on to the hero phase. So if you have any heroes in your army, you can use command abilities. Some command abilities are available to all armies. Now, there are 3 that are available to all armies, and I'm going to list them now. So the first one is at the double. You can use this command ability after you make a run roll for a friendly unit that is within 6 inches of a friendly hero, or 12 inches of a friendly hero that is a general. If you do so, the run roll is treated as being a 6. Yeah, this is really nice, especially for things like my Flesh Eater Court army, where my general is a Crypt Infernal Courtier. A lot of the time I do have the like Ghoul Kings on Zombie Dragons and Terrorgeist, but I was originally a fan of their command ability. That probably will change in the new edition, but I would go for a Crypt Infernal Courtier to make my Crypt Flayers battle line. Then I have an army of like 21 Crypt Flayers. That's really fun. The only problem with that is the only command ability I could use was Inspiring Presence as a default general, command ability. Now this is another default general command ability, which could make my Flayers, if they really need to get to an objective turn 1, like a unit of 9 Flayers, they're already moving 12 inches. And then, yeah, they could run, but and they could move, potentially 18 inches if they did that. But it's a bit random, you might roll a 1, and yeah, there is a command tray out there, or a battle tray even, that lets you re-roll those ones to charge for the Flesh Eater Court. But if you roll a 2, you're still a bit stuck. So this command ability, being able to go, right, okay, that unit, in this case Flayers, is going to move 18 inches this turn, is really nice. It's it's a nice safe bet. There's things as well, like it makes probably like in 3 places of power, I believe it is now, where your heroes or behemoths capture the objectives in that battle plan. I think you can make like a Bastiladon get onto an objective turn 1, and we all know how hard those tough guys are to shift. So yeah, I think that's a nice ability. I will certainly be using it, and even for like Angel's armies, maybe might be good if you have a couple command points just to use that to, I don't know, get your brutes up a bit further. We'll have to see. And then we move on to the next one, which is Forward to Victory. You can use this command ability after you make a charge roll for a friendly unit that is within 6 inches of a friendly hero, or 12 inches of a friendly hero that is a general. If you do so, re-roll the charge roll. So yeah, again, this is really straightforward, similar to the run one I just said at the double. But yeah, this is good because when you really need to make that charge, and we've all been there, we've all rolled a double 1 and it's disastrous, as I don't know, let's say you had a really nasty unit. For me, I've had a unit of like 4 Morghast, Arcane about to like wipe out a unit of like, I think like literally like 3, not 3, but like 5 Plague Bearers or something on an objective, and I wipe them out, I claim the objective, I get the extra victory point, it's the last turn of the game, and then I will overtake my opponent in victory points and I'll win the game. And then you roll the dice and they get a double 1, and it's absolutely devastating because there's nothing you can do about it. But if you've got a command point in the bag, you can quickly put it out and go, actually, you know what, I'm going to re-roll that charge roll, and then the chances of you getting double 1 again, unless you're really lucky, are quite slim. So it can completely change the outcome of the game. Now, I'm aware of the example I used for that were Morghast Arcane. Yeah, you could have Morghast Harbingers and they can roll like 3d6 for their charge rolls, but that was just an example I've had in the past. And then a familiar one to all of us is the third one, which is Inspiring Presence. So you can use this command ability at the start of the Battle Shock phase. If you do so, pick a friendly unit that is within 6 inches of a friendly hero, or 12 inches of a friendly hero that is a general. That unit does not have to take Battle Shock tests in that phase. So there are a couple of things to this. Firstly, yeah, it doesn't sound as good because that only lasts like 1 turn opposed to 1 battle round, like Inspiring Presence used to work. But the one good thing to it is, firstly, let's just start with, it's got more range to it. So used to be within 12 inches of your general, but now it's within 12 inches of your general, or 6 inches of any other hero. So you've got more, like I say, a wider radius you can probably put this onto units. And then the other good thing is that, let's say you've got let's say you've got 2 blocks of 40 skeletons, and how it used to happen, if you use Inspiring Presence, you Inspiring Presence 1 unit, and then the enemy will just go, okay, well that unit's not going to run away, so I'm going to put all my attacks on the other unit, do so much damage to that unit, and then make them disappear in the battle shock phase, essentially, especially if they're not like bubble wrapped and stuff. But now this means is that the enemy doesn't know what unit you're going to put Inspiring Presence on, especially if you've got that command point in the back, or if you've even got 2 command points in the bank. You can pull that out of nowhere and go, right, okay, you've done damage to both these units, I'm going to Inspiring Presence both of them. They're both not going to run away, and your opponent might think you're trying to save those command points. So it's another tactic there, it's another little poker face you can do, and yeah, it just adds more depth to it. So I think, yeah, there is a negative side to the change to Inspiring Presence being only works for 1 turn opposed to 1 battle round, but I think the positives outweigh the negatives on that one. So it then goes on to say some of these command abilities can only be used if that model is your general. When this is the case, it will be noted in the rules for the command ability. So a recent example we've seen of this is the Mortarch of Grief that is coming out from today's date. It's coming out tomorrow, so that will be very nice to see. But anyway, so its command trait only works if it's the general. It's as simple as that, really. I think there are a few others out there. I'm sure you guys can list many of them for me, but that's one that springs to mind. So yeah, it's a little bit annoying. I think has the Deep King got one as well? Their High King of the Sea, I think it's called, will only work if he's the general. I think that's true. So yeah, it's annoying, but I suppose it's narrative driven, so I don't mind it too much. Then it goes on to talk about command points. So in order to use any command ability, you must spend 1 command point. You start the battle with 1 command point for each War Scroll battalion you have in your army. In addition, you receive 1 command point at the start of each of your hero phases. You can use the same command ability several times in the same phase as long as you have enough command points to do so. Any command points you do not use can be used in future turns. Command ability will usually specify when it's used. If it does not, it is used in your hero phase. Okay, yeah, so the last bit there is just a little reminder, because there's things like the Warg ability for the Iron Jaws, I believe, works in the combat phase. Right, yeah, so command points. So I'm sure you guys know what command points are by now. There's a little info of them there. Yeah, so again, it's another reason to bring a War Scroll battalion, and I know some of them have gone up in the new General's Handbook and some of them have gone down in the new General's Handbook, so they're sort of evening out their worth. I believe is it the Lords of Sacrament battalion from the Legions of Nagash battle tome? I saw that went up in points because I think that was a bit too good for its points. But there are things like the Dead Watch battalion, which I run with my Fleshy Courts, which is the Flare battalion, it's a good battalion. It allows your Flare units within that battalion to be able to pile an attack in hero phase, which is very effective, especially if you bring 21 of them. But it was 210 points, that battalion, so I think they are making them a bit more evenly priced, I think. I'm not saying they're perfect, but probably a bit more better value now. And yeah, it's another reason to take one. You get a command point. And I know it doesn't say it there, but you also get a command point. I believe if for every 50 points you are under how many points your opponent has got, I believe you get a command point for that as well. And yeah, when it says you know, the command points carry over until to like the next battle round as well, so you can keep on clocking them really and keep on stacking them up. That's nice as well. Just, you know, it means you don't feel like, oh, I have to spend them this turn. You can just build them up until there's one turn and you can just go bam, use like maybe even 3 or possibly 4 command abilities in one turn just to make something super powerful. The only thing I've really got a question of, and you guys might not answer this, so if you do, please let me know in the comments, is where it says you can use the same command ability several times in the same phase as long as you have enough command points to do so. So obviously, let's say if you've got 2 White Kings and obviously their Lord of Bones command ability to make a death rattle unit get an extra attack, if you have 2 White Kings and 2 command points, I understand that both White Kings can use their command ability onto a unit of skeletons, and then that would make the unit skeletons have 2 extra attacks. And then the question I've got, if probably there is an answer for it somewhere, I just haven't seen it, is if you only have one white king with that command ability, and you've got 2 command points, let's say, can he use his own command ability twice? I naturally think he can't, because it might be written somewhere that, you know, a hero can only use one command ability. But if that is the case, please let me know. And then if it isn't the case, that makes things a lot more interesting. But I doubt a single hero can use a command ability more than once in the same turn. But if they can, that, like I say, will change things. Right, then moving on to everyone's favourite subject is shooting, and obviously this has changed quite a bit in the new edition. So let's start when it talks about enemy units. So a unit can shoot when it is within 3 inches of the enemy, but if it does so, it can only target enemy units that are within 3 inches of it when its shooting attacks. A unit can shoot at an enemy unit that is within 3 inches of another friendly unit without penalty. So for me, this just ability here it makes a lot of sense. You know, if I've charged my zombie dragon into your unit of, I don't know, let's say a unit of 5 judicators, I think those judicators should be more occupied with the zombie dragon trying to bite the head off, rather than going, actually, I know the big scary dragon's trying to kill me right now, but there's actually an enemy hero about a mile away in that direction, and if I can shoot that, that will really help out like our game plan. I really doubt that would be going through the Judicator's mind. I know it's going to be heroic and, like, you know, only the faithful if he's, you know, a Hollow Knight, and, you know, his death has a meaning, but I'm pretty sure in reality he really does want to save his own life. So for me, this just makes a lot more sense. And also in a gameplay perspective, as someone who's never like really had a shooting army and has always fought against them, so might be slightly one-sided here, but I wasn't a fan of shooting how it was before, especially a Flesh-Eater Court army. My heroes that I try to keep out of combat and stuff would just die really quickly and really easily. So yeah, negatives of shooting I'm quite a big fan of, even though I'll be building my Stormcast army soon and I plan to have shooting in that. I'm happy that shooting has been nerfed to a certain degree. And on the same subject that, we move on to the next shooting rule, which is Lookout Sir. And it is, you must subtract 1 from hit rolls made from missile weapons if the target of the attack is an enemy hero that is within 3 inches of an enemy unit that has 3 or more models. The Lookout Sir rule does not apply if the target hero is a monster. Again, big fan of this. So talking about my Flesh-Eater Courts, makes my heroes a lot more survivable, especially a few of them, like Vargulfs, don't have particularly good saves, and if the enemy has that -2 rend, the Vargulf doesn't have a save at that point, especially how Mystic Shields change, unless it's cover and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that, and shooting's still going to be good, don't get me wrong, but maybe it would change to more of a unit destroyer, or maybe just a what you would use to weaken down an enemy unit before it gets to you. So I think shooting will still be very good and very powerful, but it will have a different role. You can still use it to obviously kill enemy heroes, because certainly your opponent will make mistakes, as everyone does, somewhere in games, and they will not have one of their heroes within 3 inches of a unit with 3 or more models. So you'll still be able to snipe out their heroes every once in a while. And the only thing I have, like, sort of not concerned, but a bit of a thought was a bit strange, was if a hero that is within 3 inches of an enemy unit that has 3 or more models, not 5 or more models. Yes, I know there are some units like, let's say, Gork Hunters, they come in minimum size units of 3. Flesh-Eater Courts, for example, Crypt Flares, Crypt Horrors, come and minimise, you know, units of 3. But also Zangor Skyfires also come in minimum units of 3. And that Shaman that gives the, is it +1 to hit, I believe, if he's nearby. The Shamans just became harder to kill, essentially. But Skyfires are no longer nearly as good as they were before, because Off the lookout serve penalty itself. If they try and snipe an enemy hero, they're going to be -1 to that hit roll. Damned, as we will get down the rules, you'll see that's changed, so you can't get +1 to hit from that anymore. So I don't think Skyfires are going to be this. I think they'll still be very good, and definitely a good choice in each army, but I don't think they're going to be this thing that everybody hates and dreads anymore. So yeah, nothing too much to worry about there. And I'm a very, very big fan of those rule changes to shooting, and even, like I say, I'm planning on building a shooting army, or an army with elements of shooting in that. I think it's still good, and I'm happy to see that change. So, and then it goes on to like combat. So you have to fight in combat if you're within 3 inches of the enemy. That counts as being in combat, and you can't just stand there. Because I'll give you a perfect example of that. Like if I have a unit of 20 Crypt Ghouls and I'm going up against a Lord Celestin on Dracov with a 2-up save rerolling 1s. Every time it rerolls a 1 and gets a successful save, it does a mortal wound to each enemy unit within 3 inches. If I have it in combat with, I don't, like I say, 20 ghouls or whatever, let's say, I don't know, let's just say I get 10 of those ghouls into combat, and they have, I think, 3 attacks each at that point because it's a unit of 20. You know, that's like 30 attacks on this guy. This guy is not going to take any damage unless he rolls basically a double 1 for his save. There's more chance of him doing mortal wounds back to me. This has happened in the past, and I've lost like half that unit just because of the mortal wounds this guy was putting out. So in that case, I chose not to attack because I was just doing more damage to myself than I was doing to the enemy. There are other examples as well. Like, I know there's things like there's an artifact for one of the legions of Nagash that basically every time you make a save roll of a certain number, the enemy takes a mortal wound. So similar to the Lord Celestin on Dracov. And yeah, there's points where you're just like, there's no point attacking that unit because it's quite frankly just going to be a waste of time. But yeah, I mean, saying that, you must be, have to fight in combat. Like narrative wise and lore wise, it makes sense. If you're stuck in combat with something and it's trying to rip your throat open, and you've got a sword in your hand, and that thing trying to rip your throat open is an enemy, you're not exactly just going to stand there and let it do it. You're going to try and at least defend yourself. Okay, so and then after that we talk about the Pauline Interval. So this has changed. So each model must finish its pile-in move at least as close to the nearest enemy model as it was at the start of the move. So this is good. This is particularly good for Horde army. So I'll revert back to my go-to unit of 40 skeletons. You get that in combat with a monster. There was a tendency to accidentally, go base to base with the enemy monster with your like first rank of skeletons, and it just made it so much harder for the rest of them to sort of pile in around it. Now you can just move your models around that enemy monster's base, basically, so you can completely circle it, get more attacks in. It makes hordes a bit better. Well, I say a bit, it probably makes them a lot better, really, especially against monsters and things. So yeah, that will be quite a big change, and I like it as well just because it will probably save a few sort of like awkward moments, or not awkward, but just sort of not arguments either, but disagreements between you and your opponent of if that model is base to base with the enemy model you're trying to pile it around, and especially if it accidentally got knocked there, and it just saves all that unnecessary, unnicety really. So yeah, I think that's nice. It makes things like I say, it makes hordes better, and to be honest, I prefer it just because it makes the game a bit quicker as well, because you can just go, I'm not worrying about trying to make sure this isn't base to base, I can just go pile it around. So yeah, I definitely like that, and I think that will help stopping your units from losing coherency, because obviously that's a big thing now, because if you lose coherency, like quite a few of those the models that are in coherency are going to die in that unit. So I think they changed this rule and tweaked it so you won't lose so many models from lack of coherency. So yeah, I like it. And then the next little thing I've got here is War Machine. So if they have that keyword and their wound characteristics of 8 or more, they no longer get a bonus from cover. That might have already been a thing in an FAQ from first edition, but I thought that was just important because I wasn't too sure everyone was aware of that because I wasn't. So yeah, that makes sense. War Machine with 8 or more, wounds is effectively a monster at that stage. Okay, and then we go on to magic. So to start off, wizards that are within 30 inches of a caster can attempt to unbind like the enemy spell they're trying to cast. So that's a big change. 18 inches to 30 inches makes things a lot more, I would say, better, because if you've got a enemy on a, I was going to say a Bellwind Vortex for a second, but the Bellwind Vortex rule has changed. But for argument's sake, we all know what it was like when the enemy had a wizard on a Bellwind Vortex at like the back of their board edge in the first edition, and your wizard couldn't unbind because he only had 18 inches range. At least now he's got 30-inch range, so like I said, the Bellwind Vortex has changed. That's not the best example, but if the enemy can, let's say Marathi, I know she can cast, especially when she's in her like elf form, huge range on her spell she can cast. At least you stand a chance of trying to unbind them from a relatively safe distance. Again, I will be bringing Nagash to the table, and now that he can unbind within 30 inches of the enemy, he will be shutting down so many spells, it will be hilarious. Okay, and then we move on to Arcane Bolt. So this has changed. So if a unit has been hit by an Arcane Bolt, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. If the casting roll was 10 or more, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds instead. So I'm not a big fan of this change, I'm completely honest. I didn't think Arcane Bolt was overpowered at all. Now it just being 1 mortal wound, you only cast on 5, but who cares? Like, is it the Bolt of Zeech it's called, where it does D6 mortal wounds? How is that not overpowered when this is considered overpowered? I'm not saying that D6 mortal wounds is overpowered, but it's more powerful than Arcane Bolt used to be. So yeah, that's another one that's changed, especially how like I said, you had Lawsers then on Dracov, who had a 2-up save, rerolling ones. A lot of times in my Fleshy Court army, if I didn't have any rend of mortal wounds output from attacks, I just had to do Arcane Bolt a few times in the game to get rid of him. Now that's not going to happen. Yeah, there are quite a few more spells out now, and you've got the malign sorcery spells, but still it is a shame this one's changed, because I don't think it was overpowered at all. You guys might disagree with me on that, but that's just my personal opinion. And then yeah, if you've got a casting roll of 10 or more, it goes back to the D3 mortal wounds instead. But unless you've got Nagash or Arcane, 10 or more is a pretty high number in all honesty, so I'm not a fan of that at all, really. And like I say, some of them malign sorcery stuff, I know you got to pay points for it and stuff to summon onto the table, but that does horrendous things, and especially compared to the Arcane Bolt. And like, yeah, you have to pay points to summon it, but not that many points. And maybe it's because Arcane Bolt doesn't have a model they can sell. Games Workshop they haven't made a model yet to be able to cast Arcane Bolt, and they won't do that either. So maybe they made it a bit weaker. So you think, oh, I'd rather use the malign sorcery stuff instead. So you buy those. Not saying it's a marketing technique, but it might be. Okay, and then we move on to the Mystic Shield, and obviously this has changed, and this will change up the game quite a bit for what you think is just one spell. It has changed to instead of being +1 to your save, the unit you put it on has a reroll save rolls of 1 for that unit until your next hero phase. So it means Nagash is no longer having a 2-up save rerolling ones. I think it would make me a horrible person if I said I was sad about that, because when Nagash was rocking that save in 15 tournament games I had, he died once, and that's because I made a not very smart move, and all the other games he didn't die in any way, shape or form, because he was effectively unkillable. So yeah, it probably has changed for the best. But saying that, there are some things like the Nighthorn army I'll be building. Reroll save rolls are 1 for them. It's very good, because any other changes to their saves will not be taken into account. So yeah, it's good for that. Then something else I notice is for units of wizards, and when I mean units of wizards, I mean things like Sisters of the Fallen, where it's like a unit of 5 models, but they are a wizard. If you're casting a spell with that unit, you pick one of the models in that unit to cast the spell, and for all measuring intents and purposes, you know, you would measure from that one model in that unit to the enemy unit or the friendly unit you were putting that spell on. So it's not like a big, it's not like the whole unit counts as that one wizard. You pick one of them, and that's the wizard to cast that spell. Okay, then we move on to the scenery table. Now, like I said, the damned rule has changed, and quite a few of the other rules have changed, so it's worth going through it. So, damned. At the start of your hero phase, you can pick one friendly unit within 1 inch of a damned terrain feature to make a sacrifice. If you do so, that unit suffers d6 mortal wounds, but you can reroll hit rolls of 1 until your next hero phase. So straight away, this isn't as good as getting +1 to hit rolls, because there's so many things that getting +1 to hit, like triggered certain abilities that would happen on the 6, now they happen on the 5. No getting around that. But that, I think, could have been, in certain cases, that was deemed pretty OP, and especially how the scenery table is random. Like some games you might have damn terrain on the board, some games you might not. Some games you might have 3 damn terrain pieces on the board all next to each other. In one game I had damn terrain 2 pieces next to each other with my unit of 9 flares. They sacrificed to both of them. They got +2 to hit, so that meant they're hitting on 2s and doing mortal wounds on 4s, and there was 37 attacks I believe they were chucking out, and they were attacking at least twice in a turn. So yeah, that just goes to show how overpowered it can be. You've also got like Skyfires as well, like I was mentioning. This tames them down a bit, so yeah, I think it's for the best. And then the next one is Arcane. So add 1 to casting on binding rolls for wizards while they are within 1 inch of an arcane terrain feature. So this is exactly the same as it was before, apart from not within 3 inches of that terrain feature, but 1 inch. And also going back to the damn terrain as well, that's within 1 inch of that terrain feature, not 3 inches. And you'll see that with all of these, instead of being within 3 inches of the terrain feature, now it's gone down to 1 inch. I think that's also to try and prevent stacking of these terrain features abilities. Like I had one game with Nagash, and he managed to be in range of 2 arcane terrain features. So at that point, it was ridiculous, and he was getting like +5 to cast, which is, yeah, was, you know, it was, like I say, it was ridiculous. I still did it, you know, I'm still that sort of person, but it was for a tournament, and the other guy did have a Nagash, and I needed all the help I could get. Right, okay, and then the next one is Inspiring. So add 1 to the Brave characteristic of units while they are within 1 inch of any Inspiring terrain features. So this is, again, exactly how it was before, but now within 1 inch of that terrain feature, not 3 inches. And the number 4 is Deadly. So roll a dice for each unit that finishes a normal move or charge move within 1 inch of any deadly terrain feature. On a 1, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So straight away, I think this has calmed it down a little bit, because we've had times when a monster's charged across a terrain feature or something, and you roll a dice on a 1, it just dies. And yeah, that has happened before, and it really does lets your steam out a little bit, just because if you lose a monster, let's say that was worth 400 points, like I lost a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon that was 440 points, and that's a solid part of your army just gone like that, and it really changes the game around. I don't mean in the sense of like being a bad loser, how you're like, oh, that's really annoying, but at the same time, it is pretty gutting. So yeah, I think they've tamed down a little bit. However, though, like I said, it's when a normal move. Now, moves in the movement phases, they've called they've named that a normal move, just to make things a lot clearer. So that means if you move within 1 inch or charge within 1 inch of the deadly terrain feature, you suffer D3 mortal wounds. So just be careful when you step. It's not just if you run anymore. In fact, it doesn't actually mention the running. it's just moving normally. So yeah, that's going to, like I say, it's calmed it down from stopping your fusion monsters or your like free guild generals on griffins and that sort of thing dying automatically just like that. But it's, you still don't want to go through those spooky forests basically. And like I say, suffers D3 mortal wounds, and yeah, I think that's fine. That's for each unit as well. So it's like, yeah, take D3 mortal wounds, but you're not going to take horrendous amount of casualties from it. Okay, then moving on to mystical. Now this has changed as well. So roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a model within 1 inch of a mystical terrain feature. A roll of 6 plus the wound or mortal wound is negated. Now this has 100% changed. This is nothing like it used to be before. It used to be if you're within 3 inches of this in your hero phase, roll a dice. On a 2 to 6, you got to re-roll all failed wound rolls to your next hero phase. So yes, that's great. But on a 1, that unit is befuddled by the lovely bit of grass over there and will not do anything until your next hero phase, which absolutely destroyed your tactics for that unit for that turn. Now, but saying this, I really like Mystical. Me and Mystical did have quite a rocky relationship. How I always like to risk my army with it, even in tournaments, and try and get those re-roll wound rolls and things like a Terrorgeist, or like in this case, a Pauline Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, and it would just fail this mystical test non-stop. I actually had a game with a mate where this wasn't a tournament, but it was practicing for one, and it, in one single game, it failed mystical 4 times in a row to the next terrain feature. It didn't move in the game. I think 10 Skull Reapers just came up to it and killed it one turn. That was literally it. And then, like I say, when I was at a tournament, it was a game on the Warhammer Live, and I was really excited to go on there, but unfortunately, the Terrorgeist was having none of it, and I believe it failed it twice in a row. So that was a shame as well, because it was a big. The Pauline Ghoul King on Terrorgeist was 400 points, I believe. And it was a big part of my army, really needed to do things, and it would just sit there and do nothing. But if it paid off, re-roll failed wound rolls on a Terrorgeist is pretty goddamn nasty, so I have no regrets. So that's why I think it's a shame they got rid of it. I think maybe, I don't know, did people complain about it? I don't think people did. I think people were like, oh, it's a risky thing, what should I do? Should I risk it or not? I don't think anyone really had a problem with it. When you rolled a 1 and your unit couldn't do anything, you certainly had a problem with it because you're really annoyed about it. But yeah, I think people found it alright. I don't think it was a problem. So, but they have changed it to something that makes it a lot safer and automatically just a good thing to be next to in general, really. Yeah, so you basically get a death save if you're in 1 inch of this thing. So it will be a useful thing to try and hover near to for units, especially if they're not very survivable. Like, I don't know, let's say for argument's sake, you've got, Plague Monks that traditionally don't have a save. For the models that are within 1 inch of this terrain feature, let's say it's a big forest, and you can put the unit in that, like when they're moving up the board, let's say, they're getting a save. So it's good for them. Yeah, I think this will play quite a big part in the new edition as well. And then the last scenery one, so this is number 6, is Sinister, and that is subtract 1 for the bravery characteristics in units while they're in 1 inch of any Sinister terrain features. Now this is definitely different to how it was before, just because this makes a lot more sense. It's just a lot more straightforward. How it was before was if you have I haven't got it in front of me, so I can't remember verbatim, but if you have a unit within 3 inches of this terrain feature, then I believe it was until the end of that turn, enemy units that are within, I think it was 1 inch of them or 3 inch of them, have to subtract 1 from their bravery characteristic that turn. I believe it was something like that, and as you can tell, that's just overcomplicated. It was when I had to explain this to new players, they were like, okay, so it makes you scared because you're next to it. No, it makes me scary to you because I was next to it. And then like one of the new players said, well, how does that make sense? I was like, to be honest, I don't even know. So this change, yeah, it just makes things a lot simpler. Here's some spooky woods, they're scary. I'm scared that I'm next to it. I don't know it's going to come out and grab me, especially when it's, you know, dark and all that. You don't want to turn your back to it because some like creature could come up and claw your eyes out. So yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense. Now, this is something to do with scenery that is new, and this is builds it up a level from the scenery chart. And we're going to start with obstacles. So when a missile weapon targets an enemy unit that has all of its models within 1 inch of an obstacle, which, you know, for argument's sake, is like a fence, then the target unit receives the benefit of cover if the attacking model is closer to the obstacle than it is to the target unit. So yeah, I think this is cool. You know, like I say, for an example, if you're next to a fence or a brick wall or a stone wall or whatever, you should get a bit of cover from that. I think before, you know, you talk to your opponent, what does this, you know, let's say this stone wall, what benefits would it give me if I'm on this side? And you would sort of come to an agreement, but usually by then, let's say you're the one with the unit there behind this wall, your opponent is not really going to want to give you a benefit anyway, especially if they didn't like foresee it. So not because your opponent isn't nice, but it's like you're just asking for more benefits, and benefits he won't be able to get in return. So yeah, I think it's nice that, yeah, this is a rule. This is how these little bits of scenery that you weren't really too sure how to work out work. They have a purpose, and there you go. So yeah, I think that's good. And then this is a longer bit of text, and I'm going to read all of it, so forgive me if it goes on for a little bit, but this is all completely new. And this is talking about garrisons. So a unit can be set up as a garrison at the start of a battle if the terrain feature is wholly within the unit's territory. Alternatively, a unit can garrison a terrain feature instead of making a normal move if all of its models are within 6 inches of the terrain feature and there are no enemy models within 3 inches of the terrain feature or already garrison it. Units that garrison a terrain feature are removed from the battlefield and are assumed to be inside the terrain feature. Units must treat a terrain feature garrisoned by an enemy as if it were an enemy model. The range of visibility to and from the garrison unit is determined to or from the terrain feature instead. A garrison model can attack and be attacked, cast or unbind spells and use abilities, but cannot move. A garrison unit counts as being in cover if it is attacked. In addition, subtract 1 from the hit rolls of attacks made against a garrison unit. A garrison unit can leave in your movement phase. When it does, set it up so that all models from that unit are within 6 inches of the terrain feature and more than 3 inches from any enemy units. This counts as their move for that movement phase. Many terrain features that can be garrisoned include flat areas upon which models can stand. Only garrison models can be placed or moved onto the flat areas other than models that can fly, can move over flat areas but cannot finish a move or be placed on the area unless they are part of the garrison. Doing so is purely decorative. These models are still treated as garrison the terrain feature for rule purposes. So obviously can't talk about experience of this because this is brand new, but I do like it. It makes like those terrain features, and I can already think of like medieval towers and stuff having more of a part to play in it, and yeah, I think it's cool. I can definitely imagine you know, let's say a unit of, you know, 3 soldiers making a heroic last stand in a, you know, like medieval tower, garrison it to the end where it's being swarmed by zombies. You know, it's a really sort of thing you can picturesque, and yeah, I think it will add more stuff to the game and make it a lot more interesting. Again, I don't know if it's going to be a tactical option to go in a building. You might be best staying out of it, but yeah, I like it. It brings more sort of narrative, and I think it will bring out more stories from your own games. And then the last thing to say about the new core rule changes that I could see, and you guys know this already by now, and it's how people play, is Age of Sigmar for the purposes of measuring is base to base. And if your model does not have a base, it is from the closest point of your model to the closest point of the target model you're trying to target for, you know, for attacks or abilities or spells or whatever. So yeah, I think everyone was playing like that before, you know, base to base, but just in case you don't know, that is now how it works in the rules. So like I said, this video was basically just going over the changes I could see in the core rules, because I think it is really quite essential for us guys to know these changes as soon as possible. I appreciate some of you guys might already know this, but myself, I didn't until I started reading, and there were more things I saw there that I didn't realise were a thing, because they weren't in the articles Warhammer community were posting before the new release of the new edition. So yeah, I think it's definitely useful for myself anyway to go through it. I wanted to make a video about this. I said I was going to do this in my like initial video for the new edition of Age of Sigmar, just to basically start small. People are going in straight with reviewing Age of Sigmar 2nd edition, and I think there's straight away there are some fantastic channels out there and they can really do justice to this, but for me anyway, I don't feel like I can tell you guys if 2nd edition is good, because quite frankly, so far I haven't actually had a game of it. Not really. I've had like a game playing with the new spells and stuff. Apart from that, haven't really got much experience there. It's this brand new start to a new edition, and people are already giving like tactic advice and stuff for it, which I don't really see the point of it. I'd like to do a tactics video on it, talking about this is how you should play in the new edition, this will work, this won't, but if I'm honest to you guys, I'll be talking purely out of my arse. So that's why I wanted to start off small, just talk about the changes in the core rules, just so hopefully plan is to build up small, talk about like the little changes and stuff, well, a little, but play a big part in the game, and then take it from there. When it comes to like the huge core book, I probably won't be reviewing like the rules and that, because there's just gonna be too many to review. I think you guys are gonna have to read that one for yourselves, and I will probably have to try and read it for myself as well, because it's so much to read. Don't get me wrong, beautiful book, but I'm a bit lazy when it comes to some of the reading. And then what I wanted to do for the next video anyway was a Nighthaunt orientating one. I know some of you guys want to see how I do my paint scheme for the Nighthaunts with the red and the grey, because I've been painting them essentially since Age of Sigmar came out, and the reason for it is, like I say, I just want them to be a bit different. I've got a little bit of a narrative behind it as well, and red's my favourite colour, so I will look to do a like step-by-step painting video for how I achieve that scheme. And yeah, so like I say, the next video is going to be Nighthaunt orientated. I don't know if I'm going to do a review on the battle tome straight away, just because again I can't really give you a experienced take on the review of the battle tome for the Nighthaunt, because I wouldn't have played with them this weekend, and that battle tome won't be playing them for a while because they don't have the army built yet. But I can certainly look over it, and I might do a little video just telling you about my initial views. So again, yeah, so this has been a fairly long video just going over the simple changes to the rules, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out to you guys, and please let me know if there's any other changes I didn't pick out. Put them down in the comments, and then we can all sort of learn together, and that's what I really want to come from these videos, that as much as trying to help you guys out, I certainly get help from you guys, because I mean pretty much every video I do, quite a lot of them I get comments as well saying like you know, there's also this thing that is interesting that's in the new edition. I was like, oh, I didn't know about that, that's great, I'll maybe look into doing a video on it or whatever, or just have a general discussion. So anyway, I will thank you guys very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like, comment and subscribe, as again that does really help with me being able to make as many videos as I possibly can. I do want to make as many as I can in the new edition. And like I said, thank you guys very much for watching. Have a great weekend, and until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.